Hello, and welcome everyone to the Trailblazer webinar, Ready, Set, Go, Maximising Bookings. Now, the impetus behind this webinar came from knowing that hotels are reopening, hurrah, and wanting to offer our audience some advice, tips, insights as to what's actually happening with bookings, but also how to make the most of the rebound in travel. So we are going to be looking at booking behaviour, how you can appeal to new customers. We're going to explore the distribution mix between direct and OTA bookings. And we're also going to look at how to use other channels such as Metasearch. Now, this webinar has been kindly sponsored by Cvent. Cvent are a meetings, events and hospitality technology provider. And we're going to hear from Carla about what Cvent is seeing from a MICE booking perspective.
Hello everyone, my name is Carla Pierce. I work for Cvent and I'm here just to give you a quick 2-minute video on the 3 trends that you should definitely take under consideration for you to restart MICE and transient business. So the first one is that event planners are still sourcing. So we have seen $8 billion in MICE business through our Cvent Supply Network. So definitely be sure to update your profile and update your safety protocols and everything, because planners will be sending you RFPs. The next trend is that new skills and services will be needed. We have heard from planners that they're organizing hybrid events, so it's very important that your team knows how they work. They perhaps should collaborate with your AB team, external or internal, to really be able to not only quote for this kind of business, but also to sell it properly. And then the next trend and final trend is invest in a digital approach to sales and marketing. Be sure you're in channels that are full with your buyers. In this case, could be MICE, could be transient, and work with your digital team to really embrace this digital era after the pandemic, where you can really make a difference in the bookings. I know that this webinar is all about that. So just to recap, the three trends: event planners are still sourcing, new skills and services will be needed, and invest in digital approach on sales and marketing. You can find all of this in our ebook, which will be free, called The Hotel Manager's Guide to Restart MICE, and you can download it after the webinar. Thank you for listening. Bye-bye.
Now, a link to the report that Carla's just mentioned has just been posted in the chat for you to download. So a few webinar guidelines to run through. Once I've finished my introduction, we're going to spend around 45 minutes chatting with our Trailblazers, with some time at the end to take any questions from the floor. So if you do have any questions, guys, please submit them using the Q&A function. And the webinar is being recorded. Every single person that has registered will receive a copy of the recording within a couple of days. So my name is Eloise Hanson. I am the news editor at Boutique Hotel News. We are an online B2B multimedia platform for the boutique, lifestyle and luxury hotels. And we're published by International Hospitality Media, which also has 2 other sites in its portfolio. We have serviced apartment news and short-term rentals. Now I'm going to invite our Trailblazers to introduce themselves, and I'm going to move from left to right on my screen, which means I'm beginning with Suzie. I'll hand over to you first, please.
Thanks, Eloise. Hi, everyone. My name is Suzie Thompson. I'm the Vice President Commercial for Red Carnation Hotels. For those that don't know, Red Carnation Hotels are a family-owned and run collection of special boutique hotels around the world, with many locations in the UK, in Ireland, South Africa, in the US, and we're part of the Travel Corporation family of brands. So we're one of 40 travel brands that are desperate to get back to business. So very happy to be here today.
Thanks so much, Suzie. And I'm coming to Ryan next, please.
Hello, I'm Ryan Haynes. I'm the director of Haynes MarComs, a specialist marketing communications agency for travel, tourism and hospitality companies. We support businesses to build up their direct engagement with audience to drive revenue and commercial aims. As part of that, building digital infrastructures and enabling hotels particularly to identify their cost of acquisition per customers, and obviously be touching on some of that during our conversation today.
Brilliant. Thanks, Ryan. And I'm coming to Samantha next, please.
Hi there, good afternoon. My name is Samantha Williams and I'm coming from Profitroom today. For those of you that don't know Profitroom, we focus on maximising profits for hoteliers with technology. We really focus on the direct channel and everything around the direct channel, with our core product actually being the booking engine with websites. So I'm looking forward to sharing some insights today.
Thanks, Samantha. And last but not least, Daniel.
Thank you. Hi, my name is Daniel Simmons. I look after the revenue, business development and demand teams at HotelREZ. I'm based in London. We have about 2,500 clients in about 40 different countries. And what we do is we look after independent groups, apart hotels, hotels, and we connect them to the GDS, to Disco, Booking Engine, Metasearch channels. We also have 2 leisure brands, which is Best Loved and Wild Rainbow Hotels. And our goal really is to help hotels compete on a worldwide basis, but stay independent, generate good business and marketing opportunities at a very good, attractive cost to sell. And thank you for inviting me today.
You're all very welcome. It's great to have you all here. And just before we begin our context today, I always like to run through some context, and these are all screenshots of some headlines that I've published on Boutique Hotel News. And I'm going to pick up on the top left-hand story. RSM, which is an audit, tax and consulting firm, has called on city centre hotels to pivot their approach if they are to prosper in 2021, and to highlight why. Greater London saw the largest fall in room occupancy of any English region from 2019 to 2020. And in the month of July, for example, only 20% of rooms were occupied compared to 20% the previous year. Jumping now to look at the bottom left-hand story, it's perhaps unsurprising then that this headline reveals that digital marketing strategies are a top priority for hoteliers throughout 2021, exactly what Carla was highlighting in her video earlier. And by digital marketing, I'm referring to a hotel's website, your social media presence, and exactly what information you are communicating and how you are communicating this. And we're going to touch on all of this later in our conversation today. And on the next slide, we have some examples of how companies have adapted to meet new customer and market demands, because we are very much living in a different landscape now. And the top 3 stories here can all be connected in that they involve guest-facing technology, and these range from a mobile app to guest communication tool to a loyalty platform. Now, forgive me if I'm talking in simple man's terms here, but with technology, you're able to aggregate data, build a guest profile, and ultimately personalize the experience. And the relationship between technology and bookings is an interesting one, and especially when you start to look at how you can upsell and cross-sell. Now, I read a report recently that showed only 1 in 4 UK hotels allow direct F&B reservations. Given the tendency at the moment to book, order and pay through your phone, there's an argument here that there's great opportunity for UK hotels to maximise your bookings and improve revenue. So on that subject of maximising bookings, we are ready to kickstart our conversation. And Samantha, I'm going to come to you first, please, and ask whether you are able to provide us with an interview of what is actually happening with bookings across the UK and EU, and what kinds of trends are you seeing?
Yeah, of course. I mean, first of all, I will put a little caveat over the data that I'm going to represent, because it's from Profitroom's portfolio, which is majoritively 4 or 5-star leisure independently owned hotels. So we are talking about the leisure segment. So, you know, bearing that in mind. But what I will share today will hopefully give some inspiration to the city centre properties who are looking to change their strategy a little bit to capture some more of that leisure demand. So first of all, one thing that is really noteworthy is that this year, from the beginning of the year to I think the 19th of May, the data is, we saw a 75% increase in revenue for our clients compared to 2019, which makes sense with last year being so different. And that's a huge chunk of revenue to increase, particularly for business on the books. What we're seeing is a lot of advanced business on the books. In January, as leisure reopened, we saw huge booking spikes, actually, with booking windows over 100 days in most cases. Now, those booking windows are looking normal again. In the majority of hotel cases, they're sort of 30 to 45 days, falling again within the peak season for most of the leisure demand. But what I thought was really interesting is actually where those segments are increasing. If we have a look at hotels and packages and rates in 2019, what we saw were much more traditional rates being successful, whether it was bed and breakfast, dinner bed and breakfast, advanced purchase, which of course the industry has almost forgotten about, but now there's a real need for advanced purchase with, I'm sure you've heard in the news, you know, people double booking hotels. Will they stay over in the UK or actually will they go abroad? So the way that we're tackling that is quite unique. So essentially we've seen a 50% increase in package sales this year compared to 2019. What makes a package sale? It's something more than just a standard bed and breakfast, if you like. So it could include a ski trip, it could include hire, it could include an afternoon tea, it could include an activity or an event, essentially something more. We know from last year the demand of the, you know, what people are looking for. They do require more from a hotel stay. They are spending more, guests are spending more, hotels are attracting a high level of guests that are willing to pay more for the stay. We're seeing a really interesting concept now actually around demand management. So the majority of clients we work with, take June, July and August as an example, most of our portfolio are 85% plus in terms of occupancy. So actually we've had to be really intelligent with our technology and shift that demand into future months like September, October, November, and really start driving those campaigns forward. So the way that we are working proactively with sales and marketing has changed for sure.
And I'm going to pick up on your last point there, Samantha, and ask, okay, so in terms of maximising bookings, be it through the summer and beyond, what advice would you give, and whether you are going to centre this on just your leisure hotels that you've got within your portfolio, or whether you want to direct that to, say, a city centre hotel? What would be your advice?
Sure. So we have some really smart tools on our booking engine. So when somebody is searching for availability, let's say, for example, in August, and the hotel is fully booked, the booking engine will automatically recommend packages and stays outside of the summer. It will incentivize them with discounts to look at another date of staying. It will recommend different stay dates for packages. For example, it might be a honeymoon break, it could be a romantic retreat, whatever it might be. So it's always actively seeking that. We also have a CRM built into the booking engine. So that enables essentially our booking engine users are tracked. We can then retarget them afterwards. That's where it comes really with digital marketing. So for stays, for example, for September, October, we can really maximize on that traffic because we know when they're looking to stay. We have a demand analysis report essentially. So we can drive more of our digital marketing efforts to those targeted stay dates. And I think that makes a real difference. Mm-hmm. For city centre hotels, I would, try to capture some of that leisure demand. And we're seeing it now actually. So we do have some city centre hotels and resorts. And we've seen probably a much later curve. So only in the last sort of 4 weeks, we've seen them really pick up. And they have picked up on more package stays. So we have one city centre property that has a casino, for example, and actually they've done like a stay and play offer. And just something a little bit different, or they've gone out to local shops and sort of markets and said, you know, let's collaborate. So one hotel I can think of actually in Cornwall, when they were struggling to create demand, obviously that isn't a problem right now, but when they were, they had a 2-night break, and it was dine with us for the first night, have a credit for a local restaurant in the second night. So again, it brings back that community as well.
Mm-hmm. There really has been some wonderful examples over the past year or so of these collaborations, these partnerships, really innovation in the space, trying to capture that demand and drive that demand. And our audience, I'm going to try and loop you guys in here because we would love to hear from you what you are also seeing in terms of bookings and whether you guys have any insights that you would like to share. And I'd like to move on to bring Suzie into the conversation here, because you mentioned Red Carnation, you've got hotels all over the world. So can you please offer a global perspective and highlighting some of the challenges and opportunities that you've faced from a commercial perspective?
Yeah, I mean, there are many of the same challenges and opportunities regardless of where the hotels are. I mean, the biggest challenge in the last 12 months has been opening and closing different hotels in different regions based on different border controls and different rules and regulations. But I think the overarching trend is obviously there's more domestic business and there's a lot less international, which is a big challenge for us and also for all of our other friends operating, certainly city centre hotels. But as I said, the opportunity is in domestic, and we've definitely seen lots of new guests coming to our hotels from the domestic markets around the world. That perhaps wouldn't have stayed with us before. Certainly in Ireland, we were hugely supported last summer by the domestic market, and it was really amazing. Even during times when you could only sort of welcome guests from the kind of local county, it was amazing the support actually that the hotels received with guests coming to stay for a couple of nights. South Africa, the same, huge domestic business, and was a real boost for us from a cash flow point of view. And now we're seeing the same here in the UK. So we have our wonderful summer lodge property in Dorset. It's probably having the time of its life. It was always the hotel I was struggling with. It's a little bit too far away from London. It's a beautiful property if you can make the journey, but you know, we're fully booked now for the whole year. And it's just, everything is flipped on its head. We've opened our 6 hotels in London last week, which was, you know, really exciting. But, you know, life's not the same without international business in London. But we are receiving, you know, new domestic guests, which is really exciting. And hopefully those guests will stay with us and stay with the brand. So for us, that's also, you know, an exciting opportunity. Lead times are all over the place. We're seeing really short lead times, but then really long lead times for our international guests who are hoping to come back. So from a revenue management point of view, I've never been happier to have a revenue management system in place. I would say it's a bit of a hard job to do manually across the collection of 20 hotels. But yeah, I think we're seeing less managed corporate, if you like, but interestingly, we're seeing a lot of corporate guests of sort of exec level coming to stay now. So maybe the travel, you know, the corporate company has a travel ban, but still people are trying to find their way back to London and desperate to get back and see clients and have meetings. So the business is there, but perhaps it's presenting itself in a different way. So never been a better time to hang out in your hotel bars and restaurants to see who's in there and have some good sales conversations. What else? We've seen lots of wedding business in London, lots of delayed business that was coming and had to be cancelled and then postponed. Strangely, great group appetite for postponed events, certainly around London and Marathon. That's definitely bringing in groups that were planning to come and now are rebooking. So the confidence is still there, I'd say, in the group market. Had lots of repeat guests coming back purely to support us and to come back and see their favourite staff, which is amazing. It was amazing how many people stayed on May the 17th, just to say, we're coming to help you, don't worry. So that was amazing to see as well. And then, you know, the OTA bookings are flying in for domestic business. And for us, we see that as new business of guests that we wouldn't be able to reach without those partners. So good mix. There's lots of ups and downs, but I'm sure lots of my other London friends in the industry just waiting for these air bridges with the US to open.
I've definitely been keeping my close eye on London, you know, as a international hub, just trying to show my support, but also figure out how can we drive tourism back into the city. And confidence is slowly starting to come back. And I've had a question come in from Edward Wilcock, who says that he's seeing strong demand over the weekends in London, especially Saturdays. He's asked, how can we help to drive more demand midweek, considering corporate demand is still poor? And what other initiatives will help encourage leisure guests to stay in city centres? Suzie, do you want to take this with so many properties in London?
Yeah, I think what London has that, you know, the countryside doesn't have, let's say, is culture. And so working really closely with the museums reopening, you know, I know the Lion King's opening up in July, and that'll be one of the kind of big major West End productions that's able to, you know, put on such a big performance and have the right capacity to make it worthwhile. So as I think working with all of our cultural partners is going to be, you know, a key step forward. And going back to the suggestion of, you know, creating experiences, which is what we've been really working on the last few months, is putting together experiences for people to come to London and get a real culture fix. And we had the Royal Philharmonic Orchestra play just with a quintet on Saturday at the Chesterfield Mayfair with a nice 5-course dinner, and it sold out. People are hungry for music, for entertainment, for humour. So I think it's all about positioning London as a destination of culture. I think there's school holidays, which, you know, that will give us some of that midweek perhaps availability in terms of people's time. So just making sure that we are also encouraging family stays, that we are you know, creating itineraries that support families with young children. So yeah, I think there's lots we can do, but I think there's a wider industry out there outside of hotels, and that's very much working with our friends in museums, in theatres, and in local attractions.
Mm-hmm. I mean, we were just speaking sort of just before we came on this webinar about live music, and I, for one, can throw my hands up and say, yes, I miss it, and I can't wait to be back and listening to live music again. And Daniel, I'd like to loop you in here. We've just touched on, obviously, international travel is restricted, corporate travel is still subdued. So from your background angle perspective, how might a hotel that usually relies on this business perhaps best utilize a global distribution system to optimize their strategy?
No, you're absolutely right. I think in the last months since the pandemic, everyone's focused on their website, their booking engine, also the OTAs like the Booking and Expedia. But I think the GDS is just so important, and I think people really still need to focus on it. I mean, in the heyday of the GDS before the pandemic, it was increasing by about 10% each year. And even all of the properties that were still open for the essential business, mainly domestic, throughout the pandemic, they were still getting from the building industry, a lot from logistics, such as Amazon, medical, such as the NHS. So there's definitely a real focus. So people shouldn't forget it. And my advice to everyone who's property level on the call is look at the top level of the TMC and consortias. You know, look at your relationship with Amex that now owns HRG. They've just bought Essentia. Look at BCD. You know, how are you working with them? Are you in their programs? What rates are you offering? What percentage off bar are you offering them to kind of entice those people, especially midweek business, back to your property? And also, I think as the corporates start to travel, and I know I'm going to do this, when I go to Manchester or Birmingham, I'm going to add another night on and have that leisure stay and enjoy the theatre and the restaurants and the culture. So the GDS is very much with that leisure side as well. And then once you focus like on that top TMC level, look at all your domestic agencies. I mean, we know Capita, which is up for sale at the moment, Intel, Access. I mean, there's so many. Trip Actions is one to look at, which has just bought Reed and Mackay. Roomex, which is great for the properties in Ireland. There's so many great agencies out there. You know, do you have account managers at them all? And how do you work with them? Once the RFPs start, the request for pricing for 2022, when you're giving prices to all of those corporates that are booking through those agencies, make sure you don't only give them the fixed rate that you have in the past, but you're also giving them the percentage off bar rates as well, which they're going to look at. Also, and it's so important, but, you know, eventually people are going to go back to their offices in September onwards. Corporate travel is going to start. Leisure travel as well is going to start, which is about 40% of the GDS. Obviously, it depends where you're located, whether you're a rural hotel or city centre. But, you know, make sure your content's up to date, your images are there, your room descriptions, or your search locators, reference points. And also in the world we live in now, your COVID statements, car parking is a big thing on the GDS, all your safety certifications, make sure they're logos so that the agencies can see them. And I know we've heard about this before, but it's so important. Same day cancellation policies. Everyone's going to need flexibility. Another thing as well, and you know, you want a USP. Why should someone book you rather than a competitor? Do late checkouts. Say if you eat in our restaurant, you can stay in the room till 8 o'clock at night. I mean, it's a lovely selling point. Check your GDS seamless and response messages. It's very character-led, but make sure that when someone books, the agency can see your COVID policy as well when they check availability. And more corporates are going to book through the GDS moving forward. Those corporates that were using Booking and Expedia, they're going to have to use the GDS agency for procurement. So the agencies have control of expense, how much money is being spent, safety, insurance, especially the overseas business from America, from Germany, from Scandinavia. And also for all the leisure properties on board, on this course, so don't feel that the GDS isn't for you. All those really high-end agencies such as Tablet, Virtuoso, Signature, Amex Fine Hotels and Resorts, they all book through a GDS-linked agency. So make sure you're on there and that you're picture perfect.
We can certainly do our best, that's for sure. And maybe now looking outside of the GDS, I mean, you just highlighted obviously leisure hotels. There is still the GDS still has a role for them, but how else can hotels drive revenue? I mean, we're all jostling, I guess, to capture that demand.
I mean, key is the booking engine and also the Metasearch market. Metasearch is so important. I mean, as you and I know, when we're looking for a hotel, wherever it is across the world, we're always going to go on the web and type in what we're looking for. So make sure you work really, really closely with Google and TripAdvisor. I think they're the two key ones, depending on your location, to focus on.
Thanks, Daniel. And I'm now going to try and loop in Ryan here, because I'd like to ask Ryan whether you can expand on everything that we've just touched on and highlight ways that we can attract new guests and maybe utilize other channels too.
Yeah, sure. I mean, to reiterate Daniel's point about, you know, your value proposition, what are you offering that's unique and different to other properties out there? It's one of the things that we've paid close attention to over the last 18 months, and and it's a matter of realizing you really are not selling a room right now. This is all about selling an experience. People have been locked at home for the last 18 months. So why is your room any better than their own? So start really thinking about your additional service offerings, complements, illustrate their stay experience and how they can really immerse themselves whilst they're there. You know, we're not necessarily going to get our dream holidays, but it doesn't mean that you can't make it a holiday packed full of memories. And that's one thing that's going to stick with them, particularly this year. And, you know, word of mouth is still the strongest form of marketing. So in what ways can you make that experience so powerful that it's going to really sort of ricochet amongst your friends' networks and their families, etc. It's also, there's been such a change over the last year and a half. I mean, I've been working in I guess, this field for about 15 years. And I remember sort of really talking about revenue management as it sort of like popped its head up. And then we started to look at what different tools that revenue managers were using. But there's so much more now about how revenue managers are using marketing tools. You're talking about Metasearch, Google Hotel Ads. This is all a way of being able to capture that booking. So when you're looking at commission, consider that as the cost of acquisition. What is your cost per booking? And where are those bookings coming from? Because I think sometimes there's this misalignment between marketing and revenue, that marketing go off and spend the money without necessarily feeding back into revenue management where all this is, where these bookings are necessarily coming from and from what cost. So you can make those comparisons. I mean, HotelREZ is a pay-per-click model. And if you get it right, you can pay significantly less than what you do on OTAs, but you've got to get it right. It's like pay-per-click. If you get a search ad and you click that and you arrive on a landing page that says nothing about what you've just searched for, you have just lost that customer. So it really is hands in hands approach with marketing, sales and revenue to really maximize that impact. Because if you've got 85% plus occupancy, as Samantha noted during the summer, why are you marketing the summer? You're going to start to fill those 15% gap. You need to be looking at those low seasons where you can start to push that marketing, push those occupancies up. With the way we are right now, your traditional go-to-market and your source markets has considerably changed. So really look at how you can use retargeting. So third-party cookies. What are you doing with social media to target lookalike audiences to your existing customers? So this is where business intelligence really comes in. Really dive down into those numbers to identify the high-value guests. What do they look like? What are their behaviors? What sort of size party are they? What sort of do they pay per night compared to other customers? And really target them, which you can do incredibly intelligently through social media sites as well as through Google. As part of that, think about people who are living in a city and want to go to country, or people who've been stuck in the country and they want to go to the city, as Suzie made reference to earlier. There's so many cultural events and small cultural businesses that have really struggled over the last year. So how can you help smaller, maybe arts groups or arts centers, music centers to really prosper over this time? Big thing that's going to change over the next year or two is going to be cookies. Getting that first party data is going to be absolutely essential. So now is the time to do that. And that is about driving that traffic to your site. Retargeting campaigns will become more difficult. So now's the time to really start to invest in that, building up your social following, in which way you can build that database, that email database, so that you can continually market to them. Email is not dead. People still use email a lot and still look through the emails for offers. So think about how you can use the data to better segment and personalize some of the offers, particularly if they've been with you before or they came for you for maybe an afternoon tea, and then you could perhaps sell them an evening and a night so that you can welcome them back. And then it's a thing Daniel mentioned about this as well. It's the content. Content is so important on GDS. It's so important on your own website, because this is where search engines are really going to eat up all those keywords and see that relevance. Identify what's trending in your local area right now. Write some blogs and feed that into your landing pages around your rooms and the events and the attractions that are available, because people want to know what's in the area. How often have you traveled to another city in the UK and you've not had a clue of where you're going and what you're doing, even though it's your own country? I think we're the worst when traveling in our own country when it comes to actually doing the research, because we just think, oh, well, it's only 100 miles up the road. It's fine. We'll figure it out when we get there. And well, that's not necessarily useful. When you get to the hotel, then you're trying to scurry around to get that information. So HotelREZ really help them out and gives them some top tips tips on where they can do, what they can do. It's the UK, it's rainy days. What do they do on rainy days, you know, to make it that experience? Small things like, if you know, if you're a part hotel, for example, grocery shoppings, deliveries and takeaways, you know, what's open, what's available. It's little things like that that just show you care. You're going that additional mile. And again, I think to reiterate some of the points around partnerships, businesses that really complement your offering, that experience that you can sort of fully facilitate. So your local venues, attractions, tourist boards, travel agents, you know, make sure that you're listed on those sites. You get that backlink. Google loves backlinks because then it just helps with domain authority and you're going to come up higher in the search engines. It takes time, right? So if we've got a reasonably busy 3 or 4 months ahead, really dive down into your digital marketing mix, set up that infrastructure, make sure you got it right for when the quiet season is going to come again towards the end of the summer. And you really want to be filling that so you can get more organic results. And I think finally, it's just PR and media. What are you doing there?
Thank you so much. I felt like I should have had a pen and paper there and just kind of steam would have been coming off the page as I'm taking down all these notes. So thank you, Ryan. And Samantha, I'd like to come and have a look at direct bookings versus OTA bookings. Do you have any statistics around what is happening in this space at the moment?
We do, absolutely. And I think this is probably where Daniel and I sit on, you know, very opposite ends of the industry. You know, Daniel's explaining how a GDS can be useful for the leisure segment. And although it has its place, I agree. We actually work with our hoteliers who want to remove themselves from the GDS. And actually this year, we've seen more hotels move away from OTAs as well, to only offer complete direct. So it's really interesting how the pandemic has affected different types of businesses, because in the leisure industry, actually, I mean, I've got some statistics here, which I pulled this morning. There's been a 34% increase in direct reservations this year, comparing to 2019, and a 14% decrease in OTA bookings. What we have seen, though, is Metasearch really emerging as a channel. So if we look back even 2 years ago, 2% of a hotel's total direct revenue came from what we call Metasearch channels. So these are Google Hotel Ads, which are becoming very popular, Trivago, Kayak, TripAdvisor as examples. When you do a hotel search, it's the part that sits on the right-hand side as a price comparison. That's what we're talking about here. Now they're accounting for almost 6% and over for the hoteliers that we work with. And the important part there is that those bookings before, if you're not present on Metasearch, would have almost certainly come from the likes of Booking.com, Expedia, for example. That's the kind of audience that is bringing in for you. To put it into perspective, Ryan's right, everything that we do in terms of digital marketing, you have to have a cost per acquisition. Some people might not know, with Metasearch, you can have a pay per click, which is often the highest return on investment. In fact, we've got some case studies where it's as low as 4%. Considering that OTA channels charge up to sort of 20, GDS even higher sometimes, that's obviously a huge saving when we're talking about profitable segments for hoteliers. Then you can have a commission model if you want, or a cost per acquisition as well. So you could set your ads at sort of 10% or something if you wanted to, which gives you a safety net. You know what your spend is going to be, but isn't as profitable as it could be with PPC in terms of Metasearch channels. So yeah, definitely the opposite spectrum in terms of what Daniel's seeing, but it's really interesting to see. So yeah, from our side, it's for the hoteliers that we work with that you know, really focus on their direct bookings, if you like, as the focus point. We've had this year, I think, around 6% of our portfolio come away from OTAs altogether. So from my side, I think there's an opportunity actually to make your business more profitable. What we find with direct bookings, they're more likely to become your loyal customers. They spend a higher value, not just on the booking engine. So I think 2 or 3 people on this call mentioned that the booking engine is one of the most important parts of converting business. I obviously couldn't agree more. That's where we are at Profitroom in terms of providing packages. What we are seeing, however, is an increased customer spend through the booking engine, which I've already alluded to, from longer stays, experiences, add-ons, packages. And it is the loyal database, which is the most profitable segment. And therefore, that's why we focus on it so much.
So if you had to offer some advice, some tips for improving one's direct bookings, what would that be?
So it goes, I mean, there's some more traditional methods. So, you know, converting your OTA bookers in the first instance. So in our channel manager, we have some really nifty tools which actually retarget OTA bookers to collect the direct booking email. Most of you on the call will know that, for example, when you receive a booking from booking.com, it's actually an alias email. Well, our technology reaches back out to the guest because we have that built-in CRM functionality to get the correct contact details, to explain the direct booking benefits, to show actually how they could have benefited from becoming a member or accessing a hidden loyalty rate or something like that. And for us, we're a strong believer that actually loyalty starts even before the booking begins, even before they've committed to the booking, even before they've stayed. That's where you've got the opportunity. So yeah, I would focus on a direct loyalty package and make sure you're advertising it properly. Make sure it's easily accessible. With OTAs definitely have their place in the market, especially, you know, with things like the billboard effect. But you should be able to show the strengths of your property direct as well. And if your booking engine or technology isn't allowing you to do that, then that's something which I would take a look at.
Thanks, Samantha. And I know you kind of were mentioning Daniel there, that you're kind of coming at it from different backgrounds. I'd like to ask Daniel, how is Metasearch supporting your member hotels in driving that occupancy?
I mean, the Metasearch is so important. I think what hotels need to do is they need to find out what their competitor properties are up to by just searching them on the web. I mean, the Metasearch, it can be complicated if people look at it that way, but actually it's not that complicated. I mean, I think the first thing you need to do is look at your Google Analytics, see what countries your bookings are coming from, see what source your bookings are coming from as well, to give you some idea of the focus. Also, before you start on the Metasearch, look at the languages your booking engine's in. I mean, if you're focusing on Trivago, you need German. If you're focusing on some of the Chinese Metasearches, you'll need Mandarin or Cantonese. And also, when you go on the Metasearch, you know, look at the big players at the top. You'll never be able to compete against them unless you have a huge budget. Look what the Expedia and the Booking are doing. But, you know, there's Google, there's TripAdvisor, there's Skyscanner, WeGo, Kayak, Trivago. They're all so important for you. And as Suzie mentioned, I mean, there's two ways you can go on it. One is that cost per acquisition, the CPA model. You know, it's on consumed business. Make sure you don't pay on cancellations. That's a trick. Check your contracts. There's no risk, there's no budget, there's no upfront fees. So you really want a CPA model. If you have a budget, then look at the cost per click. But what's your budget going to be? Then you have to talk really carefully with the person that is putting you on that Metasearch channel to find out exactly how much you want to pay. And Ryan mentioned this, I think, the cost to sell, just to make sure that obviously you're growing the business to your hotel, but you're not paying crazy, you know, commissions in doing so. But the Metasearch, it will increase bookings to your booking engine. It will increase traffic. I think there's 100 million searches on the Metasearches every month. I don't know if that's quite right. It sounds a lot, but that's the latest research. You know, it does allow you to acquire the data of the person that's actually staying at you direct. And once you've got that data, you know, you can use companies through us or One Journey or Crichton to do the upsell, because it's not just about booking a room that everyone's mentioned. You know, it's to do with, you know, the spa, the golf, the restaurant, the afternoon tea, you know, the app to reduce touch points, or printed collateral that Crichton do. So it's so important to look at the Metasearch channel.
Thanks, Daniel. And I'd like to come to Suzie here, because we're covering so much. We've done direct bookings, we've done the GDS, we've done Metasearch, and Suzie, I know your background is in the sort of online travel world / space, and from your experience and your background, how would you say that the online booking world has changed under the influence of COVID?
So much to say. I'm a bit worried I'm going to run out of time here. So I'm going to summarize all of my thinking really quickly. I think first and foremost, all we want to do is get every booking from anywhere. Don't care. We've got to survive. So as hoteliers, I don't care where the business comes from, quite frankly, as long as it comes. And that's really the first and foremost thing for us. I think OTA channels have been really useful for delivering domestic business to us as a business where we've relied on international business, rightfully or wrongly, for a long time. And I think Metasearch is helpful for converting some of that interest. And yes, it is a lower cost, but at the end of the day, everything costs money. My sales and marketing team cost a lot of money. So, you know, new websites, we launched 20 new websites while we were closed, cost a lot of money. So yes, OTA business is expensive, but direct business is also expensive. And it's just understanding as a business what that cost is. But at the end of the day, all we care about right now is business. I think also we've really invested a lot in training our reservations team, because every single call's got to convert now, every single one. And actually more people are calling because they got more questions about protocols, about, you know, travel, about all sorts of things. And there's a great opportunity for our reservations teams to really engage there and convert that booking. So we've been certainly investing in that. In terms of, you know, really aspiring for kind of 5-star reservations and call handling standards, which I think is something we all need to think about as well. CRM effort, massive. You know, our repeat guests are like literally, you know, we spent a year just keeping in touch, staying in contact, keeping that personal relationship with our guests so that when they do come back, you know, they're going to think of us. And I think CRM, as Samantha said, is just massively key. And the OTA business comes in, delivers you a nice guest, but at the end of the day, it's your responsibility to give them a great guest experience and then stay in touch. And if you don't, then of course they're going to carry on booking through the channel that does. And we all know the OTA partners, amazing CRM, amazing sales and marketing strategies, and amazing budgets that we don't have. I think when Daniel talks about the GDS is a piece of technology. It's the travel agents and the consortia, as Daniel said, where that's going to impact your business. So actually, what are you doing with those guys? There's been huge change. Daniel gave a very impressive summary of who's bought who and who's moved. I've never seen such a change in that landscape. But that business, certainly in the luxury end of the market for 5-star hotels, is huge for us. And that's a big hole for our business right now where we're missing it. But it's not about being in the GDS or not being in the GDS. It's about what are you doing to manage the partnerships with those key consortiums and those key agents, which is absolutely huge in luxury and for the US market. What else have I got to say here? So yeah, business from everywhere, but our focus is also not to lose direct customers. So if they do come to our website, I want them to have a great experience. They do call our REZ office, I want our REZ teams to convert that business. And I think the criminal bit, and we always get goaded as hoteliers into this OTA direct conversation. But at the end of the day, you know, we just need to make sure that we're doing what we can if somebody wants to book direct, and then we're not giving a poor performance so that they have to book somewhere else. And that's it, really. I think our job is to ensure that, you know, guests are happy booking with us, that we're giving a happy booking experience. If you're a high touch, high service company and you're providing a 5-star service, you've got to do the same digitally. But yeah, I think for us, we must not lose sight of the fact that any business is good business right now, because we just got to keep going.
You mentioned then, Suzie, that you've been looking at your reservations team and they've been having to convert more bookings over the phone. And we've got a question come in from Graham about what reassurances are prospective guests looking for when booking hotels, and are they still concerned about the risks of COVID? Is this something that you are seeing at Red Carnation? Is that a concern for guests?
I mean, it's an interesting one. And hi, Graham. I'm assuming it's Graham, Mystery Partnership Graham. If it is, then a great partner of ours over the last 12 months for making sure our REZ standards are top notch. I think it's really interesting. You get so many questions, so many messages coming through social media, loads of concern, and lots of people also wanting to work through travel agents for that region, which again goes back to the importance of securing those relationships. But you know, the funny thing is, and I'll be so honest with you, the minute they check in, I don't care about anything. They're just having a lovely time, glass of champagne, and the environment in the hotel, obviously protocols are in place and everything on our side. But so it's managing the worry and the concern pre-stay and being proactive about that to reassure and obviously then avoid unnecessary cancellations. But honestly, people cannot wait to get back into hotels and do what you do in hotels, which is just have fun, be around people and leave your worries at home. And that's the experience I have. But obviously remaining professional as a business is the best way to help those guests relax.
Thanks, Suzie. And speaking of trying to improve conversions, Ryan, where are the opportunities now to capture that demand? I mean, Suzie's just said it, we'll take any business, take what we can get. So Ryan, what more could we do?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I mean, I think in some respects, you know, Suzie knocked it on the head. It's about making sure every single member of your team is in line with your sales plan, your sales strategy, that if anyone picks up a phone or has a conversation with another member of staff, you know, they're getting that same message, that same level of support whilst they're going through that. You know, certainly prior to the pandemic, I always got infuriated if I saw a rate on booking.com and called the hotel direct and they were asking me to pay 15% more. So, you know, they lost that booking or they had to pay the 20% to booking.com. So think about, I guess it's all the touch points for customers and guests, but then it's that booking journey. What is their guest experience from the moment they start looking to the moment they return back home, and at what point could you drive conversion or additional revenue? I mean, we've talked about email a lot and CRMs and how that they can send out automated messages during different phases and stages of their point to go on holiday, to being on holiday, to returning home, how you can utilize those most effectively. We've also got now messaging platforms like BookBoost, for example, where you can actually message people directly by SMS, WhatsApp, and that's just incredibly convenient. And people were lying in bed and suddenly they get a message through saying, do you want your book, you know, your lunchtime meal with us, get a cocktail for free or something. But you know, that's really sort of helping people keep aware of what's going on, know what's happening, and then, you know, make immediate decisions. And you want to make those decisions and as easy as you possibly can do. No one's really been traveling the last 18 months. So really look at that reviews process again. If anybody's looked on TripAdvisor and the likes over the last few months, a lot of reviews go back to 2019. Now, this is also going to help feed your future bookings at the same time, because people can see those positive reviews that you've just reopened, and that's going to support you even further. And then building those relationships perhaps potentially with bloggers and influencers as well, that can give your brand an extra boost to show where you particularly sit within the offerings, so that people can really make those decisions as quickly as possible. But yeah, looking at those touch points throughout the customer journey and the guest experience, and how you can accentuate that or offer additional product would certainly enable you to start building up additional revenue through that. And as Daniel and Sam and the rest have said, making that booking process so simple. If it's not as easy as it is on booking.com to book on your own site, that's where the friction's going to be caused, and you're just going to go flip straight back to booking.com. So really think about investing. As Suzie said, it all costs money, but once you've got a decent infrastructure in place with some really strong tech partners, then you know the world's your oyster.
Mm-hmm. I'd like to pick you up on that, Ryan, because I've read a couple of surveys and reports that marketing / advertising budgets are going to increase. So if you had to recommend an area that is going to be worth that investment, what would you suggest? What would you say?
I mean, we've all been talking about direct bookings, and that's about having direct contact with an audience. If you're going through OTAs, that is a step removed. In the same way as if you're doing advertising or PPC, it's a step removed. So building up your database, building up your followers on social media, having a really strong partnership communications framework, in which, what I mean by that is that you know who your partners is, you identify, you put them into little groups, you keep in contact with them regularly, you get them involved with what you're doing, you involve yourself with what they're doing. And that then just creates a way in which you can all feed off one another. And I think that over the next year and a half, we don't know what's going to happen. There's a lot of buoyancy potentially in the market, but then we saw with the recession in 2008 that took 6 to 12 months for it to make a real impact and affect the hotel industry. So really be thinking about that longer term vision now about how you need to invest, because I think that those hoteliers that don't have a decent website, that don't have the prices, that don't have all the information, and they don't support the guest are the ones that are going to lose out. And it shocked me. I wrote my first website in 1998. We're talking about 23 years ago. And when I find a hotel that doesn't have a website, I really wonder whether I was born in the wrong century.
Oh, thank you so much. We've very, I say quickly, run out of time. I knew we had a lot to cover today. There were so many questions that we could have asked, but we have the recording that we can share with our networks afterwards. And thank you to everyone that has submitted their questions. If you would like to carry on the conversation, all the profiles of our Trailblazers have been popped in the chat. So please do connect. I encourage you all to carry on chatting after this webinar. So I just have a few slides to run through before we close off today. The next webinar in the Trailblazer series is happening in 2 weeks' time on Monday, June the 7th, all about the future of smart hotels. The registration link has been popped into the chat and it'll be great to see you all there. And we are holding the Urban Living Festival this summer, July the 7th to the 8th at Tobacco Dock in London. And this event was brought around as a result of the hospitality and real estate asset classes converging, which has only been accelerated over the last year or so. And if you would like to hear more information, please do get in touch with my colleague Katie. Her details are coming up on your screen now. She'd love to hear from you. And also her LinkedIn profile, I believe, will be posted in the chat too. So all I've got to do now is to say thank you. Thank you so much for tuning in. Thanks for watching. Thanks to our wonderful Trailblazers for all your insights, advice, tips, opinions. And thank you also to Cvent for sponsoring. So do take care. I'll see you back here in 2 weeks' time and enjoy the rest of your day.